Right.
So Yaakov is here. Okay.
The fried pieces that they have, the individual pieces, but this is like $3.49. And we split one.
Yeah. Oh, Ralph's is very inexpensive. They're kosher food.
We have lunch affair every Shabbos, Kiddush Club.
Here we go. Harold is here.
Yeah, were we holding? I didn't mark.
173.
Yeah.
Okay,
Volume 19.
got it. Thank you. Oh, good. A very good topic. Okay.
Like that.
That was so good.
Let's just wait one more minute.
Did you buy your stock in U-Haul yet?
And a boat. You need a boat too.
A boat, yeah.
Crazy.
Everyone's something for nothing. It's
Every race is won by the Democrats.
yeah, every race, every race.
I think the price of our real estate in Jerusalem is going up.
I know, yeah, that's true. Buy another one. Crazy.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Every race was won by the Democrats. I mean,
The
Well,
New Jersey governor.
New Jersey and
Big governor.
Virginia are Democratic states. I mean, what did they think?
They're deep blue.
The fact that the Republicans got as close as they did is pretty.
Right, well, yeah, in the Trump election, but even the guy for attorney general in Virginia, he threatened another politician to kill him and his kids, and he won.
whoa.
Yeah.
They were talking about that today.
In California, they're projecting 50 passes.
Was that 50?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
projecting.
that I heard already is going to pass.
I think you're right. We have to buy you all.
Okay, we're on 173. Coloring food and the Melacha of tzovea. Coloring is one of the 39 melachos prohibited on Shabbos. And this is relevant when preparing food, and in other cases too. The Shibbolei Aleket was a Rishon, quotes the Sefer Yereim as writing that this melacha does not apply to coloring food itself. And by the way, if you look at our the text of the Sefer Yereim, it doesn't appear in that text. You only find it in the Shibbolei Haleket, who quotes the Sefer Yereim. He says, "Sorchiyun ala karkom." It's saffron, right? There's Persians, the yellow rice that they use. So that's the color saffron. Im yesh lochu shalav mishum tzovea. Is that a problem because of coloring? He says coloring food using spices is not the normal way of coloring, and therefore it would be permitted. Roy lebar Yisrael she'oichel tutim or shar perish tzovim. Jews who eat mulberries or other fruit that colors. So for example, let's say you're eating berries with your fingers. Then you touch your clothing, so that's going to be a problem, right? If you're going to eat fruits that discolor and could cause coloring of either clothing or even a towel that you're using as a tablecloth, the Avalei told us tzovea. It's going to be a told of tzovea. Avalim tzovea pito b'mashka peiros. But let's say some grape juice falls on your challah, it turns red. There's no coloring by food. The Ramah brings a proof to this rule in his Darkei Moshe. Rav Moshe Isserlish, besides writing, the Hagos, the Shulchan Aruch, he has a halacha sefer called Darkei Moshe, in which he goes at length into whatever the discussion of that halacha is. So in the Darkei Moshe, he brings a proof from an established halacha mentioned in the Gemara that one may add egg to mustard even though it colors it. He extrapolates that mixing red and white wine on Shabbos is permitted, contrary to a ruling of his father's Rav. Shamati me Abba Mori, Shamati Memora Rav Rabbeinu Avram means. So the Ramah's father heard from his Rebbe, Rabbeinu Avram of Minsk, the Osir Litain Yain Edom Toch Yain Lavan. That Rebbe had told his father that you can't mix red wine with white wine. Mishum tzovea. Says the Ramah, though, Aval Lefi Divrei Bala Yereim Dein Tzvia Ba'oichlin, there's no problem with coloring of food. Near the Zegam Ken Shori, that would be permitted. V'nir Ktzat Rai L'Dvarov, he says there's a proof. Mehadus of Shimon Shin Yutes, the Nosim Be'el Tzachachad Alfa Gavdos Lomara, that you can add an egg to mustard, even though it makes color to it, it's not a problem. The halacha quoted by the Ramah appears in a Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. The Gemara explains why the Melacha of borer, separating, does not apply when placing an egg in a mustard strainer, as one does not intend to separate the egg white, only to color the food. Thus, the act of coloring the food is clearly permitted. Noistim beitza b'misanenes, you can put an egg in a sieve. Tani Yaakov Karcha, l'fishein oisno sol legavon, because the whole point of it is to change the color of the food, to enhance the color of the food. And obviously, if they tell you you're allowed to do it l'chatchila on Shabbos, it's not prohibited. The Shulchan Aruch rules the same way. We're on 174 for those who've just joined us. The Shulchan Aruch in Shin Chav, Litain karkom b'tav shel mutter. You can add saffron to a dish, even though it's going to color it. Vein lochosh lo mishum tzovea de'ein tzvia ba'oichlin. There's no problem with coloration of food. Yesh mi sho'omer she'oichel tutim or shar peres hatzvuim. He brings the Ramah's statement that if your fingers were discolored by cherries or other colored fruit, you shouldn't touch your clothing. But if your bread was colored by some kind of colored fruit, that's not a problem. So although the Shulchan Aruch indicates clearly that tzovea does not apply to food, the issue is not nearly that simple. In another place, the Gemara quotes a dispute regarding the liability of a shochet who slaughters an animal on Shabbos. According to Rav, the shochet has an interest in the area of the slaughter becoming reddened with blood to indicate that the meat is fresh. That means when they sold their meat, they would display it, and he would leave the coloration around the neck so people would know, oh, this is fresh meat. But this therefore violates the Melacha of tzovea, as well as the Melacha of taking a life. You're not allowed to kill an animal on Shabbos. And then you have a problem, though, also of this tzovea. Shoichet mishum ma'chai. The Gemara asks the question, what Melacha are you violating when you shecht? Rav Amar mishum tzovea. Rav says you're discoloring with blood the area around the neck. Shmuel Amar mishum netilas neshama. You took away life. So the Gemara says mishum tzovea and mishum netilas neshama lo. I mean, what's Rav saying? I mean, he's obviously killing the animal. Why doesn't he hold that he's chayiv for netilas neshama? So oimer af mishum tzovea means he's not disagreeing that there's a malach for killing it, but there's on top of that the issue of tzovea. Amar Rav, milsa da amri. I'm going to say something. Ema ba milsa. It'll sort of explain what I said. I don't want later generations to come and laugh at me. So why is the fact that when the shoichet discolors the meat, why is he happy with that? So yeah, nichas telisus besashchita dama. He says that was practice, and and the shoichtim were happy with leaving the area of the neck bloodied. It was a selling point that this meat is very fresh. It was just shechted, and it was an invitation to people to come and buy the meat. So, according to Rav, the Melacha of tzovea applies even to coloring an animal that was slaughtered for meat. The Chayyim observes that the same Sefer Yereim that ruled above that tzovea does not apply to food items also accepts the position of the Rav as halacha. The Chayyim therefore argues that he could not have meant that tzovea never applies to food. Rather, intentionally coloring food using a substance that is typically used for coloring may be a biblical violation of tzovea. Kosovo Beis Yosef, right? Rav Yosef Karo, in the Beis Yosef, which is the commentary on the Tur, B'Shem Shibbolei Aleket brings from the Shibbolei Aleket, right, an earlier Rishon. The Tzorech Iyun, that we have to investigate, in Mutter Litein Karkom B'Tavshil, there was a question, could you add saffron to a tavshil because it discolors it or colors it? The Kosav Del Vidatze Yereim Mutter. And he brought the halacha that according to the Sefer Yereim, it was permitted to do so. However, Vemet Loshen Zelo Nimtza B'Yereim, like we said before, we don't find that Loshen in the Sefer Yereim. We only see it in the quote of the Sefer Yereim by the Shibbolei Aloket. So Tzarchi and Sharei Yereim Kosav Ladei, we see in another area in the Sefer Yereim that he specifically wrote, Da Shoichet Chai B'Shum Tzovea Gav Shu Basar. Now, once you shecht an animal, it becomes meat, so that's food. And he's worried. He says that the shoichet, by coloring the neck, he would be chayav for tzovea. And the fact that there was a proof from putting egg and mustard, the chelbon beitza, the egg white, is not a coloring agent. Even the Ramos said is only a little bit of proof. The loyadati leheter zela Rambam, he says the only person that I understand would have a heter would be the Rambam, the Lord Pasuk Karab b'shoichet. He doesn't hold like Rab, who says that a shoichet is going to be chayiv for coloring. Dovra miskayim al dovra miskayim. Because in order to be chayiv for tzovea, for coloring, it needs to be something that lasts for a long permanent time on a permanent substance. And meat is first of all, the blood may not be permanent, and the meat is also not going to be permanent. He says he doesn't know why the Sefer Mitzvahs Gedolos and the Yereim permit using the saffron. Maybe you'll say that the nusach of the Shibbolei Aleket had in the Yereim, maybe he meant that when cherries have coloration, it's not considered color, but maybe to give rice that yellow color with saffron, the karkom min seva, it is a known dye. And these dishes are used to being colored. Why should it be permitted? That professionals who prepare delicacies and color them, people who sell wine, they also add color to the wine to make it look better. I'm concerned that maybe they're chayv achatas, l'dasas mag ve'reim. Venerally, the Zed Dasar Arav Avrami means, right? The father of, excuse me, the Rebbe of the father of the Ramah, Shevi B'darchei Moshe she'oson litin yain adam b'yain lovan, who prohibited using red wine and white wine. Umay Rebbe Moichre yain shedra, and that is very common, adding red wine to white wine, and it's common in those that sell wine. V'nichel tzovea, they're happy with the coloration. Or like when the shoichet, he's happy that it's red. Afim natir akarkom. Now, even if we permit the saffron, the yesh loimad in the sinas akarkom enim shumat sevel kedin shebetotam, that the purpose of adding saffron is not for the color, but it's for the taste. Rakdat sevel memela ba. You get a side effect of the color. Kiven dein oichel bar tzovea, and since we said already that food is not a substance that we typically color. So lo machmarinan, we're not machmir. But foods that let's say is the normal practice to color, like wine. It looks like the wine merchants colored it. Or meat, where they let the red dye of the blood remain there. And so that was a common practice. Then it would be usher to do it. The Bir Halacha, right, who's the Mishnah Berurah, notes that according to Or Zarua, a Rishon, the coloring for which the shochet is liable is the coloring of the hide of the animal and not of the meat. According to this explanation, it is possible that coloring food is never a violation of tzovea, even according to Rav. Right? The Or Zarua wants to say that the hide is colored, but not the meat. Litin karkom b'tavshil, ayin b'nishmas adam, shemafak mektsas be'etzem adin me'ad isi b'shabbos ayin hey. Fima shor'iti b'Or Zarua, the Pirush Shalmad Amar, the Litvus Beis HaShechita, Hainu ha'or shel Beit HaShechita. Nichakol, everything is good, it's permitted, because tzovea still doesn't apply to food. The Prima Godim, who is a major commentary of the Shulchan Aruch, but he's an Achron, right? He lived in about the 1600s, 1700s, permits all coloring of food for one's own consumption, but writes that coloring food in order to make it more attractive to sell may be prohibited. We're talking about doing this on Shabbos. He explained that this is the reason why Rav holds the shochet liable for tzovea, because the shochet is selling to the public. And that Shmuel only disagrees as he believes that the shochet does not have that intention.
Wouldn't that be hachana anyway? He's preparing it to sell for after Shabbos. Wouldn't that be hachana prohibited for that reason?
Yeah, not mishum tzovea.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be another reason why it would be prohibited to prepare something that you're going to sell for after Shabbos. But they want to say that the only reason over there was prohibited is because these were things done on purpose to sell. But for example, to do it for your own purposes, that would be a heter. Yain Adam Belavan Shari. So the Prima Godim says adding red wine to white wine is permitted. Now remember, this also will take place at the Seder night, Friday night sometimes. And you have white wine, but people want to be choishesh for that wine. You know, they add some grape juice to it so that they have a red color. So there's a heter to do that. Yain Adam Belavan Shari. Umashmav Shirot Lasos Mara Shari. Even if you're doing it for the appearance, I would say that applies very commonly on Pesach. Yesh la'ayin b'moichre yayin sarav, but sellers of whiskey who made dvash, honey water. I guess this at that time that was like soda, like Coca-Cola for that time. Imrshon litein mar b'yayin sarav dvash lekoinim. Could you add coloration for people who are going to buy this? Denichlu b'kach. So number one, he's happy with the coloration. That would not be similar to adding saffron to the dish because that's going to be eaten. And it's always permitted. And there also the saffron doesn't last. But, like a seller, like a shoichet, who's happy that it's got that coloration. Even though we paskin like Shmuel that we're not concerned about that. we don't think that the shochet has that kavanah. We call makom yishlomer the chayiv kishoysa govern b'mashka sheyiknu mimenu. But if you're gonna be a seller of either wine or other mashkim, and you're adding coloration, that would be a problem. Kol shekin amesimim samonim b'tzluchis mayim lamid b'chalon neged hashemesh. They used to place dye in a flask of water to leave in a window facing the sun for shade, I guess. Yeshloimer kula amu moedim dechayiv the nigmar Melacha of tzovea, because you did. I get maybe it was to improve the dye. Place the dye in a flask of water, leave in the window facing the sun. Oh, so you're sort of preparing a dye, and the light is having an effect. That's like a tikkun mana. It's like a gemar melacha. That would be prohibited for that reason. So the Mishnah Brura is going to summarize all the sources we have learned, and adds that coloring food in order to sell it is also prohibited for another reason. Here comes our favorite thing, uvde dechol, something that normally is done during the week, which we do on Shabbos. He says mutter litein yayin edom toch yayin lavon. You can add red wine to white wine. Vavel bishim misadim, even though it turns color. And afilu mechavin l'chadchila lasos mara. And even your kavanah is to make the color. Ba'maichel or ba'mashke, either in the food or the drink. Kanke mistavrdein lachmer ke. Near me prima godim. You don't have to be machmer not to do it, like the prima godim, who says it never applies to food. Ulefi masha kosav nishmas adam nacholim no bizeh. But he says nishmas adam, it's correct to avoid it. But the prima godim says you don't have to be stringent. So mikol mokom en rishai lasos mare b'yayin sort v'shiyiknu imenu. But if you're even as a balabais, you're going to sell this whiskey or this drink that you make, you're not allowed to do it if you did it on Shabbos. He says it's a weekday practice, so it should be prohibited. You're not going to add certain dyes into a flask of water to put in the window for the sun to sort of complete the dyeing process. There he says, yesh bazeh chashash chivchatas. There you could be violating a melacha deraisa. Elsewhere, the Mishnah Berurah writes that it is preferable to take into account the view of those who are stringent regarding coloring food. And therefore, when making tea from essence, one should add the water to the essence rather than adding the essence to the water, right? So if you had a glazel of Wasser, right, a glass of water, and you add the essence to it, you're not coloring the water. So instead, the essence should be in the bottom of the cup, and you add the water to it, and there's no coloring going on. Says the Shard, the more general subject of preparing tea essence on Shabbos was discussed in volume 18. You should pour the water to the sense, because of those that are concerned about coloring. Shmir Shabbos Gilchas applies the same concept to other examples of coloring food. There's no problem with coloring food if your kavanah was not that you wanted the food to be colored. If your intent is to help the flavor of the dish, even though a side effect will be a coloring, that's okay if your kavanah was for taste. So he doesn't have a problem. He says you could take a glass of water and add, raspberry syrup or the essence to it, because you're not doing it for color. You're doing it for taste. When you add raspberry or tea, no one really cares what color it is. You care for the taste. Don't add coloring to food, even when it's eaten. If it's being added, if the point of adding this additive was to change the color, and certainly adding coloring to food when you have no intention to eat it. Kasher kol kavana lochlo kim lifayoto. If the whole point is to just improve its color, I guess people put up colored water bottles for decoration. There was no intent to drink this. That would be prohibited because there all you want is coloring. The gamin kol kavanato irak latikun atam l'shipuro. Now he says, even when your intent is just for taste, he says, first put the coloring agent into the cup, kigon tamtzitste, like essence, or etayana odom, or the red wine, or mitzah petal, or the raspberry syrup, and then libzuk zamayim rakachach, and then add the water, because you have less issue of coloring. If you started with a clear glass of water and you added the coloring, you've colored the water. Here, you haven't done it, essentially. So that's it's the advice we were given. Okay, what about the Sephardic poskim? The Ben Ish Chai, who lived in Baghdad, distinguishes between coloring food, which he holds as permitted, and coloring drinks, which in his view should be prohibited, due to its similarity in making liquid dye, which is biblically prohibited. Nira Loimer, shiny mayim usharmashkim me'oichlim. He says water and beverages are different than food. Yanda Rambam Zal Posak Beperek Tes Milchus Shabbos Halacha Yudalut Ha'oise Ayin Tzovea. Somebody makes a dye. Areza told Des Tzovea. V'chayiv. Ketzad. How? Kigon Shenatan Kan Katum. This was gallnut juice. L'toch mi me'afatza. Into vitriol. Shenasa kol shadal becomes black. These are dyes that are used to write a Sefer Torah. O shenosan istin l'toch me karkam. You mixed istim into saffron water. Shenasa kol yabal becomes green or yellow. V'chein kol kayotze b'zeh ayin sham. In ken hashta me'achar de'iket tzvia b'mayim min ha-Torah. So the Ben Ish Chai says, since the Torah specifically talks about liquid dyeing, we maybe should be goizer any liquid that we change its color. Even though you're adding strawberry flavoring to water, you're not trying to make a dye, right? Maybe there's a gzeir mishum the domu la'oises ayin tzovea. It's too similar to making this liquid dye. Just like there are other activities that we prevent on Shabbos because there's a similarity to a melacha. So that's only the Ben Ish Chai says regarding liquids. Aval b'tavshil, a dish, a cooked dish, v'kayotz b'shumin meichel. Saffron, that there's no reason to make a gzeira that it looks like tzovea. We normally don't color food. It's much more common to color liquids than it is food. However, Rav Ovadia strongly rejected this distinction, as there's no source for it. And we do not have the authority to make new decrees after the Gemara was completed. Coloring drinks is therefore permitted, just like coloring food. Remember, the Ben Ish Chai was trying to create a gzeira. So Rav Yosef is going to go through a careful discussion that gzeiras were made by the Gemara. We don't have the right to add gzeiras to that. Chazi Avis Lagon Rav Yosef Chaim. He saw that the Ben Ish Chai B'shut Rav Pa'alim, Yesh Ligzer B'chol Mashkin Sheishtanu. That the Ben Ish Chai said that we should make a gzeira regarding liquids that change their color. Because it's similar to making liquid dye. In his humble opinion, he casts doubt on this. We don't make our own personal gzeres, or any gzeres, after the close of the Gemara. Rav Yosef Chaim himself, B'shut Rav Paul Chelik Aleph. Rav Ovadia says he saw no precedent in any other posek to come up with this kind of gzer. Minole, so he doesn't know where it came from. He's not. He doesn't know where the Ben Ish Chai got this to make zeros that the Rishonim, that our fathers did not know of. So we have seen above that all agree that what must not color liquid that is not meant for drinking on Shabbos. The Shmir Shabbos Kolchosa writes in the Rav Shlomo Zalman that if one wishes to use a deodorizer in the toilet and only has a colored one that colors the water, if one is not particular about the color, the Melacha of tzovea does not apply. Because again, there it's being done for smell, not for color. There may, however, be a potential problem in creating a scent within the water on Shabbos. Maybe no lud. Mutter lachnis chomer mechate, he says it's permitted to add a cleansing agent, I guess like Ajax, or mefazer reyach, or deodorizer la'asla, to the toilet. Aval yazhir mishimush b'chomer kazeh shu tzovea samayim. But be careful not to color the water. V'machomer tzovea nimtza ba'asla, kfar mifnei Shabbos yotzir mimod yom. If it's already in the toilet before Shabbos, you should remove it before Shabbos begins. But he says, Shamati agon Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Maybe you have a substance which doesn't change the color. That's only if you have something that colors the water. But if you have something that doesn't color the water, if you have no other deodorizer except one that colors, mutter. If the whole point is for the smell and to deodorize, and you're not interested in the blue color, then it's okay. But you've created a new scent, and that's moilid. Even though that's not his kavana, so it's a dover sheina miskaving, which we've been through a lot. Rak lavir sareach hara, agam mistaver kivin shatama iser, whom mipnei shenira ko iser dover chodosh. The reason of an iser of noilin is because you're creating something new. Vitach and zelo shach klal hacha. And here you're not creating something new. Shamayim nishpach miyad. You're going to flush the toilet. Tacha asav tzarchiyun. He leaves it as a tzarchiyun. He doesn't give a final psak. However, the Orcha Shabbos prohibits the use of colored soap for cleaning the toilet on Shabbos in all cases. Linyan nesina sabon ba'asla b'sherutin imas sabon tzovea samayim yesh lesser b'zeh. He said he prohibits if it colors. But Rav Ovadia is more lenient in both of the above approaches, permits using colored cleaning agents in the toilet due to a combination of factors. The coloring is only temporary, as the water is soon flushed away. The Mishnah in Shabbos 12:1 says as a general rule that one is only liable for employing Melacha on Shabbos if the results of Melacha last. The Rambam applies this rule to the Melacha of tzovea specifically. However, this alone is not sufficient to permit coloring the water, as Melacha with a temporary effect is nevertheless rabbinically prohibited. One is back to the regular text. One does not intend to color the water and derives no benefit from the color. According to many, flushing the toilet would be considered a grama action causing the water to be colored, which is more lenient. Well, let's see what he says. Nishalti muta liftorach zer mayim b'Shabbos Can you flush the toilet where automatically there's a soapbox connected that when you flush, it colors the water? Is it permitted? So he says that it's not a problem regarding coloring. The water goes away. It doesn't last. So, but you're not allowed to create even something temporary. However, we have our old friend Dover Shein Miskavin. Your point in flushing is flushing, not to color. To clean out the toilet. This is the important yesod that right. Dover Shein Miskavin, you have no kavana, but if it's going to happen 100% of the time, that's called a psik resha. Now, a psik resha, when it comes to a deraisa, most of us, it's very difficult to be matir. We have to go through an analysis whether it's nichale or ichpislei. Does he care about it? Does he not care about it? So, but there is no problem with psik resha for isurei dirabanan. And since Rav Ovadia Yosef has said this whole thing is an Isur Rabbanan, even though it's a psik resha, means it's 100% going to happen every time you do it, even though you're not. The classic case of psik resha is cutting off an animal's head. I don't want the animal to die. I need the fluid to irrigate I need the blood to irrigate the grass. But we know the animal's going to die. That's a psik resha. It's 100% going to happen. So even though you have no kavana, a psik resha is more stringent. Normally, in the machlokas of Dover Shein Miskavin, you have a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. We paskin like Rabbi Shimon that Dover Shein Miskavin is permitted in general, but by a psik resha, even Rabbi Shimon will be moideh, except in cases of maybe psik resha v'lo nichale, or maybe we have a discussion of lo ichpeslei, doesn't care, versus he's not happy about it. How far do you have to go with that? But we don't have to deal with any of that here, because this is only a rabbinic prohibition, and the psik resha issue is not a problem. V'od, says Rav Ovadia, sharei einat tzvia balia de grama. The coloring is an indirect. B'hasaras hamonea shel koach hamayim. It's like a secondary action. I'm not exactly sure, because I don't have this kind of thing. By removing the preventer of the water flow. Umavur b'shut chatam soifer, shasar saberes, that opening up a faucet, or ptichato yedei adam, lo mikre havi yedei adam. That's not a direct action. Kivan shein rak meisra, meaning, you remove the preventer, means you have something blocking the water flow. Now you, let's say even opening up a faucet. It's not directly you doing it. It's a secondary action. So he calls it a grama. The water is flowing by gravity. And ivrishain svarzumuskemes, even though Naveri agrees to this, he says the coloring of this water, he can't find why there would be a Torah prohibition ka'omer. He says we can rely on the Chasam Sofer that the whole opening of the water here is a grama. There's two rabbinic issues: grama, and that it's by even a temporary coloration, it's rabbinic. A third reason to be lenient is he's not interested in the coloring of the water. Here we go. Betrayed Rabbanan de Mishrishor. He says it's completely permitted. It would seem that Rav Shlomo Zalman disagrees with this assumption, as he takes into consideration whether the individual desires the color or not. Presumably, the purpose of coloring the water is to give the appearance of cleanliness. The Pnim and Halacha, Rav Eliezer Melamed cites both sides, and rules that I think one should be stringent to use non-colorized deodorizers, especially if one specifically desires the color. But one who wishes to be lenient has a basis upon which to rely. In the toilet bowl, there is something that automatically, when you flush it, the blue soap comes out. Can you flush the toilet? Some hold that since he is interested in coloring, even though it's only going to be temporary, it's prohibited rabbinically. He says, mineged, opposite that, since the whole purpose of the soap is l'chitui, is to deodorize. And the coloring is just sort of a side effect. You can flush it. Rav Melamed paskins that better to use a non-colored soap. He ends up in a toilet where he sees that it's going to be a coloration. You should you can flush. You have something to rely on. Photochromic lenses, commonly referred to as transition lenses, are lenses that turn dark in sunlight in order to provide protection from the sun. For those who wear glasses with these lenses, going outside on Shabbos raises a question regarding tzovea. May one cause the color change? Saul is showing me that his glasses do this. Rav Moshe Feinstein rules that it's permitted, as the lens does not itself become colored, but merely gets covered with a colored substance. Hine b'davar zchuchit shel mishkafayim, shenikra photogray, shenasu b'ofen zeh kisholchim b'shemesh. It's made so when you walk in the sun, heim kemo mishkafei shemesh, they turn into like sunglasses. Ukisholchim b'tzeil, when they walk in the shade, nasa b'chazar meshach regoim bahir, and then after a few seconds it goes clear again. Like regular glass of a pair of glasses. Rav Moshe says, any rob is a isser. I don't see a prohibited reason to prohibit. Lo mishum tzovea, the lo mishum misakin mana. Right? There's two potential problems: coloring and like fixing a kli. Number one, dahalo nitzvah klum. Nothing really is colored. Midabo mara rishon b'chazara. Depending on where you are, all of a sudden the glass is going to become clear. It goes back and forth, back and forth. Let's say some colored substance was placed over the glass. But it doesn't color the lens, it just covers it. He says, fixing a kli doesn't apply. This is how this kli was made, to be dark in the sun and to be light. So you're not changing anything. What about spreading food and the melacha of mamachek, right? Smoothing animal hides by removing their hairs. The Gemara mentions two toldos of this melacha: rubbing hide between pillars to smooth it, and spreading cream onto a wound. If you place hides between pillars and you rub it between them, that's mamachek. And then you spread cream like like Neosporin ointment, right? Under a bandage onto a wound is liable to mamachik. The Mordechai assumes that the Melacha of mamachik follows the same rules as the Melacha of ma'abed, which was tanning, and therefore it doesn't apply to food on a biblical level. Rav Yeshayev Trani, who last week we learned who holds that the Melacha of ma'abed does apply to food, would maintain that mamachik as well applies to food on a biblical level. But the Mordechai, remember, the Mordechai is a Rishon. The Mordechai questions whether both these malachos may apply to food on a rabbinical level. He concludes that even when food can be eaten without spreading it, such that spreading does not carry major significance, it is meritorious to avoid spreading food on Shabbos. Well, we're talking about cream cheese and peanut butter, right? Ein ibud ba'ochlim. There's no tanning. Mikan oimer ha'olim she'oisam tartish, some kind of tartar of apples, shel tapuchim muter lachlikam. You can spread it. Vein be'em mishum mamachik. She'ein ibud ba'ochlim, because this doesn't apply to food. Aval mikoma koin zuraya. He says that's not approved. When they said that there's no tanning, maybe only midarav, or midrabanan yesh. Since these things can be eaten even without spreading on something, but if you're machmin, you don't do it, you should get a bracha, says the Mordechai. The Ramah follows the Mordechai. He says, you can smooth food. You can eat it without it. You can eat it without spreading. You can eat cream cheese without spreading. You can eat peanut butter without spreading it. But I guess a dish made from apple, I don't know what that is, like some kind of apple,
Apple butter.
like apple butter. I would say,
Chunky.
no, like you make apple preserves, like jam out of apples, and you spread it. Like in an apple strudel, that
Yeah,
the
that's
stuff
true.
inside of it, but you spread that. And they probably made that, and people spread that on bread. You don't know that because we don't do that today, but I could see them doing that. I mean, we don't know really what they're talking about, but the tapuchim,
They take they put
like
apple
apple.
starch in it or something. Thicken
Oh, to thicken
To
the
thicken,
stuff?
it's like applesauce with,
That's, yeah, maybe.
probably like,
The Magen Avraham writes the name of the Agos Smak, that despite this ruling, spreading cooked apples, butter, and the like on bread is certainly permitted.
apple butter.
If you can't eat it without spreading, it would be also but smoothing is like mamachek, which applies to food, but umuter lemarecha tapuchim sheyashivu gam lemakam harekan.
Like to fill a hole in a wall or something.
Muter lemarecha tapuchim sheyashivu gam lemakam harekan. Like spackle?
Use it to fill a hole.
With apple?
Look, apple butter,
I know, but this is something else. There's Smock said
like,
that if you spread cooked apples to fill an empty space, that's permitted. I mean, I understand why you can spread it on bread, because we said ein mamachik by oichlin. But if you're going to use it like spackle, that seems to be more in like an industrial thing, more like tanning and mamachik that should be prohibited. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah
Well, he
rules,
says, yeah. Well, that's why he says it's prohibited. If you spread it on bread, because that's
but
on
it's
food.
permitted. Spreading cooked apples so that they should fill an empty space is permitted.
Oh, he says permitted.
Permitted.
That's weird. That's strange.
Doesn't that seem strange?
no, but maybe they mean like,
About a whole,
are they talking a hole in the wall or like on a pastry? Like on a piece of, like it's
Could be because it's not permanent. It's just temporary.
a French pastry.
Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Notes that the same applies to smoothing butter onto bread as well. And the Bir Halacha explains that there's no reason to act stringently here. Since the additional fact that one can eat the food without smoothing the spread, one's intent is not to smooth the food, but simply to fill the area of the bread. So what we're talking about, Yaakov, I think, is not a hole in the wall. We're talking about the bread had a hole in it, or like it wasn't complete, and you use this item to fill it up, like peanut butter. Let's say you took a bagel and you got rid of the No, people they don't want to have so much.
The middle.
They take out the middle of the bacon, then you fill it with this kind of thing. That's what must be what it's talking about. Because the heter is about food.
Yeah, true.
You want to fill the space. And the food will definitely be smooth and some psik reisha. However, now he said that a psik reisha rabbanon is still prohibited. Since there's another reason to be lenient, which is that you can eat it without the smoothing. So ein lachmir klal. That's the Mishnah Berurah. So the Piskei Teshuvos writes that there are 3 levels of stringency regarding spreading food. If the point of spreading, it's not for beautification of anything, it's just to eat it. So like decoration, you're talking about like applying cake frosting. So that would be for decoration. But now we're not talking about decorating. Let's say, he's talking about if the kavana
It says for
is not for
purpose
noise.
of smoothing or. He says or for decoration.
So the first get there is we're now smoothing something not for beautification of the food. It's just for eating it. Like peanut butter. You don't put peanut butter on for decorating. Even something you don't necessarily eat without spreading. This category includes spreading cream cheese, butter, or other spreads on breads or crackers, as well as spreading frosting on a cake. I don't know why frosting on a cake is for noi. So let's go to Beis. If the kavana is for decoration, you don't eat it without spreading it. So I don't know why in footnote 28 he talked about frosting on a cake.
But look at 29.
Okay, if it's for decoration. And you can eat it without spreading it. Yes, I guess you could stick your finger in some frosting and eat it. People like to do that. Yeah, I like to do that too. That's right. If it's not usually smooth and decorated, it's permitted. But oh, so mikradin, it's okay. So it's just a stringency. And that category, he says, includes tchina, hummus, eksa, and the like on bread, as these are not always eaten in this manner.
Right, you can eat them separately or by dipping into it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop here. And then we'll finish this segment next week. It's too much to finish tonight. And then we will start this very relevant next to urine. How do you open up bottles and, bags of potato chips, packages, containers, cans of drinks? Okay. Everybody, have a great week.